Hi, everyone, and welcome. Happy Valentine's Day with thee.
Happy Valentine's Day, Alex. I got my little Valentine right here.
Oh, look at him.
He
So
has
cute.
to sit on my lap while I'm streaming. Like, it's his rule. So
Does
he's
he get
right here
jealous?
with us. I think he does. All the dogs do.
Well, firstly, it's been a
So
minute
what?
since we've done something
I
together.
know.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing? You're the one making all the waves out there.
Hanging on in there.
Yeah, I feel like I'm always reading something about something that you're doing, including the meeting that you had. Congratulations on that. That was
Oh,
huge.
with the Member of Parliament, yeah. It's the start of a very
Mm-hmm.
long process. I think it's there's a lot that's going on that will come out soon, hopefully. But yeah, I'm just trying to do what I can to give a voice to people whose voices have been taken away, and fight the fight, I suppose.
Yep.
How are things going in your end? Are you enjoying being out of the city and you're in the desert, right?
Yeah, it's been really nice. Farther away from Scientology, just not seeing constant reminders, not seeing Sea Org members, not being, harassed or stalked nearly as much. It's been lovely, actually. It's very peaceful outside of the city, and it's, I grew up in Hollywood area, so it's like a really nice reset to my nervous system to just be in a peaceful place. But we do have real weather here, and we've been going through like crazy storm. LA got a crazy storm yesterday too. So did all of California. We had like a, what's it called, atmospheric river, and it's
Wow.
kind of wild after the fires. Yeah, so the weather is definitely real, and that's taken some getting used to, but I like it.
I guess you guys are in need of some rain, though, after all the fires in LA, right?
Yeah, but then there's a mudslide risk. So a lot of the houses that did survive are like they had to evacuate because then the debris coming down, because it was a lot of rain for the last 2 days. So there was definitely a lot of situations in Los Angeles County, but thankfully up here, I'm like in the high desert. So I'm in a mountain in the desert. So it's up here. The elevation's really high. So sometimes we have different weather than LA. And it was really wild storm last night. It hit LA first and then hit us. And so I wasn't even sure we'd be able to talk, but it seems so far so good. The wind is like roaring out there though.
Well, look, we'll power on. Hopefully we don't get cut off or whatever, but we seem to have a good connection for now. CO Bilf is in the house saying
Yeah.
happy Valentine's Day, Alex. Thank you. My one true love. So I thought it would be a good conversation to have on Valentine's Day to talk about love in Scientology, because love isn't really a topic that is broached. Like there's not, there's courses on anything and everything, how to communicate better, how to, fix problems at work, even there's one about how to have a successful marriage. But it doesn't really talk about the concept of love. It talks about ARC, affinity, reality, and communication, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I wanted to maybe first start by asking, like, because I joined Scientology as a kid, but you were raised in Scientology. So like from day one, you were completely surrounded by that way of thinking and everything. Like as a kid, what was your understanding of love based on being raised in Scientology?
I would actually always ask that question. Like, I remember looking it up in the tech dictionary and asking, and basically it was described to me as just affinity. And something I learned after the fact was that unconditional love does not exist in Scientology. Everything is literally based on a condition or an agreement or exchange. It's one of the core concepts. So I definitely learned love from my parents because it wasn't, part of the literature. It was more about finding a 2D who fits. What do they say? The same comm lag or something is the
Yeah, and
partner.
the same so 2D for those watching is the second dynamic. So the second dynamic of life is love, sex, relationships. And when you talk about having a partnership, a husband or wife, a relationship, it's called a 2D. And I was told it's about finding a common purpose. Like as long as your purposes align and there's no comm lag, you're good. So as long as you agree on where you're going in life and you have a good communication level between the two of you, match made in heaven. And it's like, well, no, that's not the case. You can have a good communication cycle, no comm lag with your parents. You could agree with them that your purpose in life, but that doesn't mean you're going to have a relationship with them, right? It kind of skirts around the topic, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's I was told you could create a 2D with anyone, and that's something that they really believe. So there's no thought given to chemistry or attraction necessarily. That's kind of like a body thing, right? So if someone was like a higher level Scientologist, that would be like probably reason enough to have a 2D with them or be their boyfriend or girlfriend. And it's really weird, actually.
Yeah. Well, Paralyzed here. It's just said LRH talks about love in the R&D volumes. He says anyone can decide to be in love with anyone else. IQ plus or minus 10 and common purpose must match. How romantic. Yeah, there's no talk there about feelings, right? There's no talk about, like you said, chemistry. It just says you just have to decide you're in love, and then suddenly you're in love. It's nuts.
Yeah. Side note, one of my first boyfriends, if you will, was L. Ron Hubbard's grandson. And he was really a sweetheart. He really was. But I could only imagine being one of his wives, and clearly he was not a loving man, and that's why it's not wound into the religion.
Yeah. That's a big question, isn't it? It's like LRH's upbringing and whether he had love in his family that was unconditional, and maybe that's why he doesn't broach the subject in Scientology. But that question of like conditional and unconditional love, and you mentioned exchange there, like everything in Scientology is a transaction. If you are working for a business, you give your time and then you get money in return. That's the exchange, and that applies to even relationships and everything. So like if you have, sorry, my phone's going off. So if you're in a relationship, there has to be an exchange. You can't be always giving or always receiving. You have to be on par. And yeah, that kind of makes sense. But when it comes to love, that's not something that I will only love you if you do this. It should be something that is unconditional, right?
It's really damaging to grow up feeling that way. Like there's no room for mistake, Most children go through phases and grow out of them, and they know that their family will always love them no matter what. And that's something that really wasn't present in Scientology families. It was like, you mess up, you're going to get disconnected from. So
were you scared of that happening? Because obviously everyone in Scientology knows that if you speak out, if you leave, if you become an SP, then disconnection is enforced. But did you grow up thinking that if you were to ever leave Scientology, that you would have to disconnect from your family? Or did you kind of think, I know disconnection is a thing, but they'll never make me disconnect from my family. They don't actually do that. Like, what was your understanding of it growing up?
It was really just a reality that I had seen so many times. So it was just a known fact among really all of us that if you were, off the rails, and if you especially spoke to the press, then you were going to be ousted from your family. And to this day, it keeps a lot of people from saying things. I think a lot of people just don't want to even open that chapter of their life. They've just moved on. But also, it took me a long time to feel comfortable with even saying anything after they had my family disconnected from me for years, So it's definitely a deeply ingrained fear that, one, you're going to lose your family, all your friends, your connections. You kind of have to be ready for that.
And it must be horrible growing up, like always thinking that love is conditional, like even with your parents, like love should be unconditional. You love your kids no matter what. But if there's something in the back of your mind that says, if I do this, they will disconnect, therefore the love is gone, that must have taught you as a child to look at love differently, or no?
Oh, yeah. And then the more I learned about developmental psych, it's really hard for children to move through the phases of, just growth when there isn't that. And I think it's Eric Erickson who talks about unconditional positive regard as being the definition of love, which I really like. And he says that all children really need that. So I do think a lot of us ended up with some CPTSD type emotional wounds that are just different,
Yeah, absolutely. Paralyze here is with a super chat on your channel saying happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, thank you so much.
And then
thank you
too, Alex. Thank you.
You too, Alex.
You too. You're also there. I wanted to pull up a quote here. So there's a book called New Slant on Life that L. Ron Hubbard wrote. Mm-hmm. It's one of the basic books. And I found this quote, which I thought was quite interesting. It says, the physical universe could be called a love-hate universe, for these two are the most prominently displayed features, and neither one has any great altitude. Although many claim that love is all and that love is high on the tone scale, which it is not. Like, could it be any clearer?
That's a good one.
I was shocked. I was like, because I was looking for references of like, where does LRH talk about love, and there isn't much of them. Mm-hmm. And I searched New Slant on Life, and it had, I think it was 12 times the word love features in the entire book. And this is meant to be one of the basic important books that you read when you first join Scientology. And yeah, it says outright here that love is not important and it's not high up on the tone scale, which is where you want to be.
Yeah. My first love was essentially presented to me as like a past life engram.
No.
Yeah. So, there's definitely not that sense of, I want to check out, I have a tech dictionary right here, and I do remember looking up love. I want to see if it has anything.
Yeah, I want to know what the definition of love is in Scientology, because Scientology has its own whole language, and like every word has been redefined by L. Ron Hubbard based on like what he means. Yeah, there we go.
This is the dictionary. It's really thick. Wouldn't it be funny if they don't even have it? Oh, okay.
It wouldn't surprise me.
They have it. All right, get this.
All right.
Love. Number 1. Love as a word has too many meanings. And so we use an old word, affinity, as meaning the love or brotherhood from one dynamic to another. Could it be any more sterile?
So it's like he's saying he's defining love by saying it actually means something different. Like he's defining it with a different word, which has a different meaning.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he didn't understand the concept.
No, he's taken all of the emotion out of it.
There's 2 more definitions.
Go for it.
The human manifestation of admiration. That's from Pab 8.
I mean, I can see where he's coming from, but I think you can have love without necessarily it manifesting itself in admiration. Like an unconditional love for a child is something that you have as a parent, I would imagine, from the day the child is born.
I'm still stuck on the human part.
Yeah, that too.
Like,
So what,
why was
animals
he
don't
so
have love for
weird?
their owners or for their mates?
I mean, I think about aliens. Like, he's talking as if he's not a human.
I didn't even think
The
about that.
human manifestation, like,
Yeah, because in Scientology, we consider us, we were told we were Homo novus, like we weren't Homo sapiens. We're like the next level up. We're our own species. We're not human. We're Thetans, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we therefore don't feel love because we don't manifest it because we're not human. That's what he's saying there.
Interesting. Well, we are, if we're taught anything, that's probably true. And then the third, this is really funny, actually. This is from Self-Analysis. An intensity of happiness addressed in a certain direction.
That just sounds really creepy.
So, like, what?
You can have happiness about, but not be in love. You can also,
I mean, I get it if you're like, I love pizza. Like, I have an intensity of happiness towards pizza.
Yeah. But like if you love someone, that doesn't necessarily mean you're happy with them all the time. Like you fall out with your friends that you love, you can fall out with your partner and still have love for them, but not be happy.
True.
I think he had no idea what it is. He had no concept of what love is, I think. Or maybe he did, and that's why he had to redefine it.
No, I don't think he understood it at all. Clearly, from his bigotry and abuse of his wives, and like, he was just not a loving man, it seems like.
Was that, I mean, I don't want to pry too much into your past relationships, but did you see any of those traits in his grandson? Like, was he a completely different person? Like, could it have been a hereditary thing, do you think?
No, I don't. I think he's good. He was really raised without Scientology in the house so much. Right. But it is interesting to like think about genetic dispositions just in general and like look at members of his family and be like, what is in your brain? What are you thinking? Like, you know, I have stayed in contact with him over the years and I just find him a really interesting person. But the shitty part of the Hubbard, I think that died with the man. I think his family has like really changed that tide from a lot of different ways from the ones I know.
That just makes it worse. Like that shows that it was just this one egomaniac guy who has created like that makes it worse for him that it's not a genetic thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, just to imagine that kind of I think it's hard enough to date with just my background and like having to ever explain to somebody that, you know, I grew up in a cult and, oh, this is why I'm not in touch with certain friends or family members or whatever. But imagine like your actual family member was like the cult leader. Like, how are you supposed to broach that topic? Like, I should be lucky. I'm just, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I wonder what, you know, there are surviving family members, the Hubbard family. Some are still in, some are not. Yeah, it must be an interesting conversation to have, especially if you've just left. Like if you're recently out and your grandfather was Scientology's founder, like that must be a really difficult subject to broach, and it must take a lot more to kind of get over it, I suppose. Well, not get over it, but like deal with, you know.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. And also just our human instincts for survival. Like if that's your family, you're kind of genetically programmed to sometimes see the best, you know? So I bet it would be very interesting to take that apart. But actually, most of the family members I've ever known over time have not been interested in it at all and have just distanced themselves. So that says a lot too.
Good. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And what was your, like, growing up in like we talked about growing up in Scientology and the concept of love being conditional, exchange, all of that. Like, how was it taught to you? Like the difference between familial love, friendships, and love in that aspect, and like a relationship. Like, how would you approach that if you had a crush on someone or whatever, and you wanted to explore whether there's a relationship there or not? Like, the way you go about it in Scientology is very different to how you would do it outside of Scientology. Like, what was that experience like for you?
I really only liked Scientology guys until I turned about 16.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, let me at all these other. But the truth is I hung out with a lot of kids who were born into Scientology, but weren't really doing it. And they were going to public school. So they wouldn't claim it. Nobody would ever know, but they still were like safe in my eyes or my parents' eyes or whatever, because their family members were in the church. So for me, it was not explained. It was more like explained as a conditional arrangement, right? And there's the 2D exchange, there's sex and family, which is very cut and dry. I do remember going to seminars like at the mission, the local mission, like how to find and build the best relationship. And my mom would be like, you should go. I'd be like, okay, maybe there'll be like cute Scientology guys there. There so never were.
It's like a teenage like dating hookup type thing. It's pitched as a seminar, but actually it's an opportunity to meet other single people.
That's what I was hoping, but it wasn't great. But then
like just filled with like these old parents who are just like they don't have anything better to do.
Or like that random dude from school, you're like, oh no, not you. But they did also, it was really popular when my parents had split up and they were both dating. They were on multiple Scientology only dating websites. And that's how they met some of their relationships going forward. And so Scientologists are very serious about just dating other Scientologists. So when I first started dating non-Scientologists, I remember I actually got this guy to do courses at CC, and he was like the most unlikely candidate. I find out later he was like totally just doing bad things before and then going on course and like doing like just, it was wild. But he was also the son of a Christian preacher. So it was even crazier that I was like getting him to do overcoming ups and downs and stuff. But my mom was happy with it. And I thought that's what I had to do. And then I kind of gave up on the whole converting them to Scientologists as I got older. Like
there was a real pressure to do that. Like I remember I had a girlfriend when I was in Scientology for a period of time, and she wasn't a Scientologist. And there was a real pressure to get her into Scientology because at this point I'd signed my SEAL contract. And I've never spoken about this on my channel. I'd signed my SEAL contract. So I was like on a project prepare to go arrive at Flag and like dedicate the rest of my life to Scientology. And I remember this being a conversation of like, what does this mean for my relationship? And they were like, well, look, you're unless she joins the Sea Org too, you're going to have to break up because you can only have a relationship with someone if you're married to them in the Sea Org. And you won't be allowed to get married to someone who's not in the Sea Org. And I was like, right, okay, so that's a thing we need to handle. So let's first off start by making her a Scientologist. Then we'll get her into the Sea Org. But like, let's make her a Scientologist first. So we got her to do STCC, the Success Through Communication course. And she didn't like it. She was like, not into it at all. But there was a big like handling program that I was doing with ethics of like, how do we get my girlfriend to be a Scientologist when she just wasn't vibing with it. And you could totally tell that she was just doing it because like she felt she had to because I was asking her to do it, and it wasn't like she wasn't reaching for Scientology, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. If you're doing it seriously, you can't really be dating a non-Scientologist, or they better just STF you about anything negative. Like that would
Oh,
be a huge.
yeah, she got that message loud and clear from day one. Like she never said anything negative about Scientology, and even when she wasn't like happy and not enjoying the course, she'd never say anything negative. And we didn't, you know, when you like you don't need a conversation with someone to get the message. Like I think I made it clear to her you can't say anything bad about
Yeah.
Scientology, but also she knew, and I knew that she wasn't enjoying herself. And it was similar. Like, did your parents ever try and pimp you out with other Scientology kids? Did they try and like hook you up?
No, but they just expected me to get with like a super theta dude. The worst was that people would actually try to recruit us into the Sea Org if they wanted to marry us.
Oh my God, that's the worst. It's just so manipulative, isn't it? Like,
Well,
you know,
it's just like the law. It was just the way it was, like
yeah.
just the structure of, but it's so manipulative from the cult. And like,
Yeah.
we're not thinking about that at the time. We're just thinking like, oh yeah, I want to get married and have a wedding at CCE. And a lot of people got married at like 15, 16.
I used to be a part of this Scientologist group on Facebook, and as soon as I started getting some prominence with my activism, I was swiftly removed from the group. It was only about a year ago. I'd organized like the IES protest, which got in like the global media, and I was still in the group. Like it took a while for them to catch up, but it was quite funny because in this group, there were all the time there were these parents posting to Scientologists worldwide saying, hey, I've got like a 15-year-old daughter and she's looking for a 2D. She's really
Oh
outgoing.
no.
And it was full of all these parents pimping their kids out, and it was so cringe because then other parents would comment and be like, oh, she sounds like a perfect match for like my 16-year-old son who's like doing this course, and he's actually looking for a twin on his like book one co-auditing or whatever. And I was reading this going like, how awkward must those kids feel, like their parents going up to them and going, hey, I found someone for you, you should meet up. Like, how cringe.
I mean, the truth is there's not that many out there, so I guess they have to resort to this these days. Like I used to go to, Scientology schools, and I would be around all the kids and stuff. So it wasn't like I wasn't meeting other Scientology kids,
Yeah.
But the one thing I really don't like is that there's no loyalty. Like it's literally usually when love is involved, there's like a level of loyalty to a person, and they're just so like cut and dry about everything.
Yeah, and it's like there are so many stories of couples that are in the Sea Org, and one of them decides to leave, and then the one that's left has to decide, do I go with my partner or do I go with my family, or whatever the choice is for them at the time. It's really tough for them, but it's like that loyalty is broken because most of the time people choose to stick with Scientology because that means they get to see their family, or or maybe they believe in it and they're like fully dedicated or whatever. But like it just must be really hard. There are obviously examples like Mark and Claire Headley who left one left and then the other left, so they kind of left together and their marriage is still intact, which is great. But like there are a lot of families and partnerships that were completely broken apart by it, and for me it just shows that there's no concept of love that's really taught in Scientology, because if you knew what love really was and you had unconditional love for someone, if they decided I'm out, then you would go with them, like even if you didn't agree, because you love that person, right?
Well, it's also just because you're pretty much told it's just one relationship in this one lifetime, right? So it's not like you're not bonded as normally. And yeah, so it's kind of just very, oh, you're just being reactive if you have, lingering feelings or something like that. It's pretty harsh, and not love is not spoken of. Especially, I was just thinking about how people would go to the chaplain and get quote unquote marriage counseling, which is not discussing love or strategies or anything that I'm learning in school right now to help. It's literally doing a 2D co-audit, which is pulling overts and withholds, which are transgressions, in front of each other, which is wild.
It's not the problem in your marriage is that you've done something wrong, and it's like you've committed a crime against the other person, or you just need to communicate better. It's like, no, a marriage can fall apart because people fall out of love, right? It could be that you just don't love each other. That's fine. But no, but Scientology teaching is overts and withholds. Like, write down what you've done wrong, or do it in a co-auditing session and like tell your spouse. Like, how that's really, I'm just thinking about how horrible that must be. Like, say for example you have
right?
a relationship that's like maybe somewhat like one has cheated on the other, right? And then they go to get this counseling, and the solution is to sit them together in a room and then be like, okay, tell me everything that happened, like in it's precise, specific detail. Like, that's only going to traumatize the person who's been cheated on, right? That's disgusting.
Yeah. In my opinion, it's just a wild method of keeping people together. I think it doesn't, for the most part. People I know who have gone to the chaplain have ended up divorced. So, yeah.
You know what they also love to do is like dangle. They love to use flirtation and the idea of love to recruit people in. Like, if you look at Div 6, the public facing division in Scientology, like it's you don't have to be like a model, but you have to be relatively good looking. They're not going to put a certain type of person on the front lines of Scientology because someone who's overweight, or someone who's, in a wheelchair, disabled, or something like this. You're not going to see them probably working for Scientology anyway, because they're very ableist and discriminatory. But if they were on staff, they wouldn't be recruiting. And they like to put attractive people, and they used to like turn on the flirt to get people in. Like, I remember one of the Sea Org recruiters that was trying to get me to sign my contract was like fluttering her eyelids and being like, hey, yeah, you should, like, just exploiting that to try and get you as a hormonal teenage boy to be like, oh, okay, yeah, there's it's, and then as soon as you sign your contract, you never see that person again. And it's like, no, you just turn it on to get them in, right?
Yeah. It's actually called flirty fishing, and it's used by multiple cults. I think my own dad got into Scientology from like a pretty girl or something, in his own words. So it's definitely a thing. And I don't know that it's ever spoken about or talked about, but it's definitely modeled. And the Sea Org recruiters were like that too, for sure.
Yeah. I remember there was a female at London Org who I had a crush on at one period of time, and I was 15, right? And so I asked my senior, Charlie, I was like, how do you like talk to girls? Like, how, like, I've never had to do that before. How does this work? And he was like, well, in Scientology, we teach ARC, right? Affinity, reality, and communication. So if you want to have affinity for someone, i.e. love, you need to find things to agree upon, reality. And the way you do that is more communication. So you just need to communicate with her, just talk to her, and eventually she'll fall in love with you because your ARC expands like this. And at the time I was like, I don't quite see the logic, but okay, let's give it a go. And then I'd like talk to her and whatever. And then she got to the point where she was like, I'm not interested. And I was like, okay, fine. And then moved on with other things. But like, it's just mad, that concept of the more you talk to someone, the more they'll fall in love with you. That's not how it works. You know?
It's so incorrect. And it really is scary, the implications for teaching people that, because I remember meeting up with a friend who had left Scientology, but he was raised in it like me. And the implications of learning that kind of stuff really stuck with it, because I remember him being like, yeah, I want a girlfriend. I was like, well, how do you like meet people? It's like, well, usually if I see a pretty woman out walking, I'll just like follow her home and knock on her door. I was like, whoa.
No.
Like, there's just no concept of boundaries. It's just like ARC, raise the affinity, raise the reality, raise the communication. It's like really not good advice at all.
Yeah, and if you like, if you followed someone home and that person said, hey, I'm a bit uncomfortable now, and then like decides to stop talking to you, then that means your ARC broken. And so there's a way to fix that, like, and get back into communication with them, and all the, pull your overts, and like you've done something wrong, whatever, like find the thing that's caused the upset and fix it through communication. It's like, no, some people, like, you don't have to agree with everybody on everything all the time. I think we've lost Vanessa. Excellent. While we wait for her internet to restore, let's have a little look at some of these comments. Ron Mowgli here. Hey, she's back. Hi.
Hi.
Ron yeah, go on.
SP Crusader brought up a good point. I was told to reach and withdraw. That's a huge one.
I remember that. Reach and withdraw. Like, okay, so I've communicated with her and she said she's not interested. And then Charlie was like, okay, cool. So that doesn't mean no. It just means reach and withdraw. So you've reached, now you need to withdraw and not talk to her for a bit. It's like, okay, cool. And then a week later, you'd be like, right, dude, it's been a week. You should speak to her again now. And I was like, I don't think she's interested. She said she's not interested. And like, I'm cool with that. He's like, no, reach and withdraw. You need to communicate and do it more than you did last time. Because reach and withdraw is how you get someone to want you. And I'm like, dude, she doesn't want me. Like, that's the end of.
It's so creepy.
Yeah. But like, they were trying to hook us up because, she'd signed a seal contract and all of this. And, it's great. It's horrible. But yeah, SP Crusader's got a good point there. And Ron Mowgli says emotional tone scale doesn't talk about love. Yeah, you'd think love, being a very strong emotion, would feature on the emotional tone scale.
Am I frozen on your side?
No, I think I'm frozen.
Oh, yeah, you are frozen on my side.
Okay, hold on. Let me switch my internet. Over to you for a second. I can still hear you
for now. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. Lenny said, I was told you reach out and leave them hanging in a conversation, so they have to reach out to you to finish the call. Yeah, I've heard that too. Oh, hi, JR. I had a male coworker show up at my doorstep because he liked me. Yeah, that's just totally considered normal behavior. Oh, hello, Alex. Welcome back.
We thought you were going to have the internet issues, but it was me.
Well.
There we go. All right, next one. I am the Storm 9. All Scientology loves is money. Yeah. But they don't teach you to reach and withdraw with money, do they?
Actually, have you ever done the money course?
Well, yeah, it was reach and withdraw to get money from someone. But like, if I had donated money one day to the IES or something, and the next day someone tried to get me for money again, and I said, no, I reached yesterday, I'm going to withdraw now, and I'm going to reach again tomorrow. That's not going to fly. Reach and withdraw works when you're drawing money, not when you're giving money.
Totally, 100%. Yeah. Did you ever date a Scientology female?
No.
Interesting.
And I'm glad. because I think that would have ended terribly. Because, like I said, Scientology doesn't. Well, at the time, I was like totally up for it, and as a Scientologist, I was in this big predicament of like wanting my girlfriend to be a Scientologist and her not being a Scientologist being a problem. If I was still in Scientology and we broke up, then yeah, I would have tried to find a Scientology girlfriend. But now looking back on it, it's like, no, it wouldn't have worked, because ultimately I've left and now I'm speaking out. So that would have ended terribly. And that's what Scientology does, is like destroy relationships, doesn't it? Because it puts people in that awkward situation of having to choose.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the inkling to leave, and then you're definitely, a lot of people keep it from their partners. You hear that for, 15 years they stayed married, but one wanted to leave and never brought it up. I've heard about certain people getting declared while they're married to a Scientologist, and then the Scientologist having to work hard to get it lifted. And it's a lot of undue stress on like just the family structure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you've been raised in Scientology, like I can only imagine how much harder that is, like the depth that it goes to in your mind, But
yeah.
Leanie here has a really good point. I was told you reach out and leave them hanging in a conversation, so they have to reach out to you to finish the com. Hey, how's it going?
Just leave them wanting a little bit more.
Yeah, like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, good, thanks. You? Silence. If someone doesn't reply, that's probably because they don't want to talk to you. But no, Scientology teaches that they're not replying because they're reaching and withdrawing, which means secretly they love you. Like, no, it's not the case. But
yeah, it's like so manipulative too. It's like how to manipulate the situation.
Yeah, because that's what it is, like manipulating the tone scale and manipulating conversations. Like with the ARC triangle, it's like, cool, if you like someone, talk to them more so that they fall in love with you. It's not even like the question that they just might not love you. Like, no, there is a solution. They just need to decide.
It really creates delusional people. Like, it's really bad for encouraging delusions.
Yeah. Well, it all came from the mind of a delusional man, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. It just keeps
cupboard.
like the ego getting stronger and stronger, and they're just getting more and more certain of their powers. And you're like, whoa, bro. No. Chill back.
Careful JCYT says, seems like the need to conform and be secretive about how you feel. Seems like it would be hard to have a deep, real relationship. Well, yeah, because in Scientology, you have to write KRs on people, right? Like knowledge reports. So even if you're married to someone and you have a family and whatever, if your spouse decides I'm out or I'm not really feeling it anymore, you would have to report them, because the idea in Scientology is that ethics can bring them back into line, find out what they've done wrong, their transgressions, get them to do OWs, so that then they fall back in line again. Because the only reason that they don't like Scientology anymore is because they've done something wrong. So you end up in a situation where you don't tell people how you're feeling, really, even in a relationship, because of the snitch culture.
Totally. That's why it was so important for me to like have one or two friends growing up that we actually could vent to each other and know that the other person wasn't going to turn each other in, because you're absolutely right. I mean, people were always writing KRs on each other, and they're doing it because they believe it's going to help the other person. But it just creates such trust issues, and you really feel, I mean, do you remember how it felt to just get a KR one day? And then it's just a list of things that crimes you allegedly committed or things you did bad. Like,
Yeah, I will never
That
forget
doesn't feel
my
good.
first KR. Like, so for some reason, I was really upstat, right? And I was selling books and we were like doing really, really well.
Of
And
course
so
you were. You little upset theta potato.
so I had ethics protection. Like for a little while, I was like this golden boy, like untouchable at London Org, because it was like I still got the commendations because like we used to sell 20 books a week and then we were selling like 100 books a week. So everyone was like, Alex can do what he wants. Like he's got ethics protection. And I remember I never had a KR before, and then my stats went down one week and I got this KR from, so I was like, what the hell is this? Like, what? And then it was filed with a yawn because I had ethics protection. And then the moment my stats crashed, and that was about the time that I was like in the process of being upset, and then they kicked me out. They pulled out this file and were like, oh, and you've done this wrong, and you've done this wrong, and there's this KR and this KR over the last like year. And I was like, wait, hold on, no, these KRs were like, because I had ethics protection, there was no handling. It's fine, like whatever. Now my stats have gone down. You're just banking them up until my stats go down. Like I didn't realize that's how it worked. I thought it was like you get a KR, if you're good and you're upstat, then you just ignore it. But no, they save it in the bank and use it as ammunition later.
Yeah, I mean, for people who don't know, there's kind of a system of where like allegedly a commendation cancels out a KR, but I feel like it's more like 4 commendations to 1 KR, right?
And it depends who it's from as well. Like if you just get a commendation from your senior that says, you know, well done this week, like that means nothing. But if you get, like I had a commendation from the commanding officer of the Continental Liaison Publications Office, COCPLO UK.
Ooh la la.
So that was like someone really senior. And when that came down lines, I was like walking on cloud. I was like, yeah, I'm untouchable. I'm doing really, really well. That probably would have counteracted a KR. But like, you know, yeah, it's supposed to be tit for tat, but it's totally not. And it just depends who's got it in for you. Like if an ethics officer wants to get you in trouble, he'll find a way.
Yeah. It's people have compared it to the Stasi, which was the, you know, snitch culture of the Nazis.
It's true.
And I agree.
People ask what would the world be like if Scientology ran the place, and it would be like, you know, East Germany after the war, or it would be like North Korea where everyone's treading on eggshells the whole time, and that causes you to look inwards a lot because you can't share how you're feeling, right? And that again, it's a culture that's not what's the word, encouraging of love. Like love is when you have feelings for someone and you have an open exchange of like ideas and you talk about how you feel. You can open yourself up to somebody and be truthfully yourself and vulnerable and all of these things. But when you have a culture that doesn't let you do that, it's not conducive to creating like vulnerabilities. It just makes you on guard all the time, right?
100%. I mean, there's people whose entire quote unquote religion is love, you know, and I definitely went through a phase after leaving where I was just like, love is the answer, like listening to all Beatles and just like, you know, really like, I'm just gonna love everything because it had not been a concept. And then, you know, you see that the world has a lot of love and a lot of sad things, and there's a balance to everything. But hopefully, you don't have lasting issues from the way that your young mind formed there. Do you think you do?
I think everyone does. Like that's, you know, I was in Scientology all in about 5 years, which isn't as much as other people like you. I wasn't raised in it, but I did join when I was a child, and it was still my formative years as a teenager.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's lasting damage, of course, but like, you know, you can't really compare it to somebody whose whole family was in Scientology, who was born and raised in it. Like it's just, I can't even imagine that, you know, how hard it must be for those people. And that's why I think it's really important to talk about like community and support when you leave. Like that's one of the big drivers of why I'm doing what I'm doing, is to show that if you leave Scientology, there's all these people out here that are willing to support you and help you, and there will be unconditional love. You might not feel it at first, but there are people who will welcome you with open arms. And you know, even the ethics officer that kicked me out and wrote these horrible things and locked me in a room and said that I couldn't leave until I'd, you know, forcibly held me against my will as a teenager, like even the person that did that, if he called me tomorrow and said I need help leaving, I'd be there to pick him up. You know, I'm not going to completely overlook everything and be his best mate and love him straight away, but like there's definitely an unconditional love there, and that like that from a support perspective of like it doesn't give you a free pass, but it does mean that I'll help you, because that's what love really is, I think, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I also don't want to give anybody unrealistic expectations about the real world either, because it is rough out here and we were not prepared for it. Like truly, we were not made for the real world. We all went to Scientology schools and it was just very guarded. And so when you actually hit the real world, you do see that like you leave Scientology and you want to believe that everything is like roses and fairy tales out in the real world. And you kind of like, some people hit the bottom really hard, really quickly, because our functioning is not such that normal society is like conducive to us being normal and happy. So I had to get educated. Like for me, that was my saving grace, is just like going to school and learning the history of America and different, you know, helpful things so that I actually felt like I could fit in and function in the real world. But there are people out here who will help you, me being one, Alex being one, people at the foundations, and there's definitely other people, but also, you know, keep your guard up. Like there are definitely different people who come through the survivor space that like, you know, you just want to, we never had boundaries in Scientology. It's like if they're a Scientologist, then they're just good. And it's kind of like that in the X community too. You want to just like,
without a doubt, like there is still a part of me that thinks like that, like, oh, they're an ex-Scientologist, so they're good, like they get me, I get them, we're good, like we're best mates. It's like, well, no, there is an element of that trauma bonding, but like, you know, ex-Scientologists don't have to be friends. Like you don't have to be best mates with everyone, even if you have shared experiences. And that was one of the hardest things for me to learn coming out, is that cult mindset is like a gang. Like it used to be, oh, they're a Scientologist, therefore they've got my back. And it's like, cool, well, they're an ex-Scientologist, so they've got my back. And it's like, well, yeah, they might have my back in the activism space, but you know, if I knocked on their door in the middle of the night, they'll probably go, dude, go away, leave me alone. Whereas like a friend who's not an ex-Scientologist, if I knock on the door at midnight, they'd be like, are you okay? What's up? Come on in, let's have a cup of tea, you know? Like, and that was a hard thing to learn, you know?
Totally. It's a lot of people who are recovering from a lot of trauma that are just all completely unique and have different genetics and different life situations. And it's really not surprising that there's been so much turbulence in this like area, in this space, whatever. But that being said, I talked to so many people who I grew up with who are not practicing anymore regularly, and it's not on YouTube and nobody knows who they are, but there is still that underground network of connection too. You know, like there is that loyalty. Like we literally came from this weird ass situation, and we're kind of like, some people have called it Hitler youth, like taught to just not have feelings and just dominate and control and all this crazy stuff. So it's definitely, you know, that the support is there if you want it, but you're also going to have realistic expectations too.
And like learn to put your boundaries in and be, you know, it's very tempting to start a YouTube channel and do a live stream every day and like jump into it. And it's like, well, actually, you know, people have asked me, quite a few people who have left Scientology that haven't spoken out have like contacted me like, I want to do an interview on your channel, I'm out now, and blah blah blah. And I always push back and I go, look, I will always give you a platform to share your story, yes, but do you really feel that you're ready for that? Because it can become so all encompassing, because you're given this platform to say what you want, there's no censorship, which is fantastic, but sometimes it's better to take a step back and like work on yourself first, and like have a bit of time to find your feet and like figure out where your head is at, and like do a bit of that mental health journey before speaking about it publicly, because you need to figure some stuff out first. But that's not me saying I'm controlling the narrative and I won't have you on. Like, if you decide you want to be on my channel, absolutely, without a doubt, but I just advise you think about it a little bit and don't jump into it. Learn where your boundaries are, right?
Yeah. No, I think you've been really helpful with like sharing people's stories, especially from a directorial, like you've done some really cool edits and stuff like that. But the cool thing about YouTube is that there really is no director, there's no person who's telling you you have to tell your story. Like, you can literally just start a YouTube channel and start share your story. And the thing I like about it is that it's going to be here permanently, and it's a record for us to share and document, you know?
That's what I mean. Like, that's a pro and a con, right? Like, some people need that outlet but aren't ready for it to be something that's forever there, and it's like a big step. And so, like SP Crusader Leanie's saying, and be able to tell your story without bursting into tears, like, I think we need vulnerability. Like, some of the most powerful streams that I've watched from ex-Scientologists are ones where they do open up and they're vulnerable and they cry, not because I want people to cry, but because it shows that they're processing stuff, and it helps you feel like you're not alone in what you're feeling. So that is helpful, but you also have to understand that like that is on the internet forever. And you know, if you're prepared to be vulnerable and on that and stuff online, great, go for it. But like, you know, don't go into it thinking it's really easy and I can just click go and start saying what I want, because things will be triggering and you will get upset if you're not prepared for it, you know, and that can be more damaging. But
100, and not to mention the harassment and the everything that comes along with it, the trolls, the people thinking they want to know your business. Before I forget, you gave me a great lead-in to talk about, I renamed my channel to Recovering from Scientology. And I'm going to start sharing some of the awesome information that I'm learning while I'm doing this master's program in social work.
This is one of the things that I love about you, Vanessa, is you've come out shining, and you're like, not only am I recovering and like speaking about it and learning, but you're actually like going back to school and you did a course and now you're doing your master's, and like you're learning real mental health stuff, like not what Scientology teaches about mental health, and then you're using that to actually help people in the real world. I love it. This is this is your channel here for people to subscribe to.
Thank you. Kids. Yeah, I made a new little billboard, new little icon, and just felt like it kind of reflects my mission a little bit. And while I'm learning all this stuff, why not share it, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like sharing, it helps other people. Like, I find it's helpful to me, but it helps other people as well. Blow drill here, healing out loud is ugly, and we run the risk of bleeding all over the ones we are trying to relate to and help. Yeah, it's not pretty healing from an abusive cult, but sometimes showing that vulnerability is helpful to other people. You know?
Yeah.
Let's have a look here. AT Chick here says you have empathy and understand where they are. Yeah, I think that was the comment when I was talking about people leaving and like having love for them, even if they're the ones that hurt you. I think the word is empathy there, and empathy is absolutely Scientology.
Yeah.
Where is love? Like, that's the thing with Scientology. Like, think about any other church, like a Christian church, and like, you know, if you walk in, you've never been to a church before, and you say, hey, can I just talk to someone? I'm pretty sure a priest or a bishop or whatever is going to sit down and listen to you talk and show you love in not in a creepy way, but well, maybe it depends what church, but you know what I mean? Like there's that understanding of like empathy. Whereas in Scientology, it's like, where is the empathy in anything that they're doing? When they send volunteer ministers out, they're giving out booklets because they want to promote themselves. When they do truth about drugs, it's because they want photo opportunities, because they want PR, not because they actually want to care about people. If you are disabled or LGBTQ plus and you walk into a church of Scientology, they'll take your money, but they are secretly judging you, and they're not going to let you attest to the state of clear without curing those things. So where is the empathy? Like there is no, doesn't matter who you are, we accept you and love you for who you are. That's not a thing in Scientology.
No, it's definitely not. And it's something that we want to cultivate and work on getting as much as possible in our lives after post Scientology. Honestly, for me, animals have been my savior, and doing foster work and teaching literally abused animals to trust again has been my saving grace to just, you know, and giving me such a sense of purpose, because animals can give you that unconditional love that maybe you're not comfortable with humans giving you.
Yeah, well, it is a human emotion after all, isn't it? According to LRH.
According to LRH.
Treasure Bloke here has a good question, and maybe this is one we can end it on. Vanessa, tell them about cognitive versus affective empathy in COS. Loads of the first, less of the latter.
I mean, I'm interested of what they mean, but probably cognitive versus affective would be thinking that you should be able to relate. Like in Scientology, they have the ARC triangle, like what you were talking about, and in it is reality. And it really comes down to trying to relate to people, because apparently everyone lives in their own reality. So you can have a shared reality or not, but having cognitive, like we don't use the word empathy in Scientology, but having a shared reality would be more of like a cognitive empathy. Whereas when you actually feel like an emotion of someone else, when you're sitting in the room and they're crying, and then you start to feel like, am I going to cry? Like that's really changing your own emotions, you know, and really putting you in that position. I feel like after Scientology, I literally became too empathetic, and I had to start switching to having a measure of empathy, but also sympathy for people, and not actually putting myself in their shoes, because it's so emotionally taxing all the time. And there's only so much you can do about it, and you have to have boundaries around that. So
that's
it's
what I was
just,
going to say.
you know,
again, it's like, it's learning boundaries, isn't it? Because when you leave Scientology, you don't know about these things. So you have to explore a bit to find out where your boundaries are, and then find out when to put them in, right? And so, yeah, you want to, you feel the empathy for everyone, but then you realize actually maybe I'm not in a position to be able to help this person, right? Maybe that's something that someone else can do. Maybe I'm not ready for that because it's going to be triggering or whatever. Like learning that boundary has been really hard, because you do want to help everyone. Like that's why we were in Scientology. That's why I joined staff, was because it was like, this is the best way of helping people. So it's like instinctive to have empathy for people, but then like learning, no, actually I can't help you unless I help myself first sometimes, right? And it's not a selfish thing to put a boundary in place.
It's almost the arrogance that you think you can help anybody or everybody. Like
I used to be a Scientologist. I can do anything. I can fix anybody. It's like, no, you know, you can't, you're not the best in the world. You know, get rid of that ego. We're just human at the end of the day. We're not homo novus. Right. And yeah, that's a big thing. But anyway, V, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course. Thanks for spending Valentine's Day with me, Alex.
I couldn't have thought of anyone better to have my Valentine's Day with. But thank you so much.
You
For anything
guys.
you want to say before we wrap up? Obviously, everyone needs to go and subscribe to your channel, Recovering from
Oh,
Scientology.
thank you.
Anything
It
else you want
has
to say?
been super fun to have people come by on Valentine's Day and hang out with us in the chat. And like, you know, I'll be logging on again soon. I know you're going to be as productive as ever. So we'll all keep tabs on Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll do something again soon. I really appreciate it. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. And don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and leave a comment down below after the live stream. And we'll see you on the next one.